And welcome everyone to the FounderCorps series. We have this breakfast series every month, and we're very happy to be hosting this for everyone here today. And we have a wonderful speaker. Please enjoy coffee and donuts at the end, at the back, and I'll turn it over to Jonathan. So we'll kick off the morning.
Thank you. So good morning, everybody. Good to see you. So welcome to the latest in the series, Coffee and Donut series. FounderCorps is a not-profit, operates here in town. We're composed solely by serial entrepreneurs. It's a self-financed organization, and we're happy to partner. Must be true. It got a little musical. No, it's good. It's much where I was at Arena Stage over the weekend, and in the middle of this incredibly tense moment in the play, somebody's cell phone detonates. Right? How would you like? And the poor woman could not find it in her bag. Could not. And there are like 1,000 people like. She's like panicking, freaking out. Literally, she's throwing stuff out of her bag into the air, and she didn't find the phone, and then the message beep went off as well. And she's lucky she didn't get stoned to death. Jezebel! Anyway, so welcome. Stephen Chen, who I've known a couple of years now, is one of members of FounderCorps, but he's also, I think, highly indicative and exemplary of the kind of entrepreneurship here that is so important to our true ecosystem and what really makes Washington-centric entrepreneurship so interesting, and very much want you to get a sense of stories like Stephen's. So Stephen, welcome.
Thank you for having me. First I want to thank Jonathan for the opportunity. Second, I want to thank him for the grilling last conference. So.
Yeah, you know the truth. It's always like that. It's gotcha questions, and yeah, that's not going to happen. So, but let's start with just to frame it. Stephen wears some interesting hats in town, other than my consigliere and keeping me honest in many ways. He is both an investor and a serial entrepreneur. So through the course of the next half hour, 45 minutes, I'm going to want to talk a little bit about both. Stephen, I think the place to start when I think about you is, if you don't mind, talk a bit about your entrepreneurial journey. How did you start out? When did you start to think about being an entrepreneur, and how did that happen for you?
I thought about that. Really just happened, right? I was an engineer, and I just wanted to learn more. And I remember I was trying to learn how to set up a booth with sales, and they said, "Well, Stephen, you're an engineer. You're the vice president. Let us do that." But I just wanted to learn everything, and news announcement, how to write product release, how to take pictures, and eventually. I reached the ceiling in a family company. I wanted to grow, and they said, "Stephen, we don't want to grow." So I left and started my own. It was really a scary experience.
So you were in a classic situation, and that many of us find ourselves in, which is most entrepreneurial businesses are actually closely held and family owned. I mean, that's a little known fact, but. Most businesses are what we would call, as investors, lifestyle businesses, a somewhat pejorative term somehow, but what it means as a practical matter is a company that supports a family very well. So you got hired out of school after you'd done your engineering degree to go
Yes.
work this family-owned business?
Yes.
And what was it like having an entrepreneurial spirit working in a family business? Were they tolerant for a while? Were you useful? Did they throw you out? Or how did that dynamic work as you realized that you were tired of working within their constraints?
Well, the first 5 years was great. Right?
Wow.
So from engineering to VP, because when someone work hard and you're innovative and getting new products done, and every company welcomes that. Then the next 3 years, wow, the first 3 years. Well, actually, I was there 10. Typically, I stay with a company, not just 1 or 2 years. I stayed 10 years. So Then the next 3 years was great.
You must be 180 now.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Okay, that's fine. Well, there's my embarrassing question. You look great for 110. I gotta tell you, very functional. You got all your teeth. It's good.
Yeah, actually, I'm only 36.
Well, you live in Lagermetric. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you look great for 36 too.
Yeah. So eventually, I reached a cultural glass ceiling. Right? The family business didn't want to grow, and I wanted to grow. So, and I tried to negotiate a spin-off, but then I found out my mentor, my boss, was really trying to discourage me to spin off and just stay as vice president. Mm-hmm. So I had to cut the cord and just be on my own.
So how'd you do that?
Well, I tried to negotiate a deal. At that time, I was talking to Dama Chrysler, Mercedes-Benz as an investor, talking to a company in Philadelphia, and I was talking to a local company. They were a government contractor looking for investment opportunity, and they were doing service. They wanted to do products, and through introduction, they found me, and they digged me out. So I moved here, and they were my incubator. The company is APCO. So I spent 10 years with 3TI, from beginning and changed direction 2 times until we exit.
So when you're going through the process of being your own guy, you clearly had the push of like the parrot and the monster.com ad, not another day, not another day. You obviously reached a point where you're fed up. But what pulled you into the particular entrepreneurial opportunity you chose? How did you go through the process of deciding what to do?
Well, at that time I had a patent for a shock sensor for computer hard disk drive. Right now, every computer has one, but at the time, Apple was the only one wanted one. So I got older, from HP, Seagate, all the hard disk drive company. But it's a significant separation from the original company. So I wanted to pursue the dream. And when you believe you have a technology, you believe you have the market, and you just have to try it.
So how did you get the technology out of the existing company? Did they claim that it was theirs, or?
So what happened is I left the company and changed the technology, tried to do the same thing, and got a new patent. And I will recommend everybody who wants to be an entrepreneur, make sure there's a clean cut. Reputation is important. I think
it is important. Be a good leaver. Absolutely, yes. Be a good leaver. Yeah. So you started this new business, and you were able to start it with the benefit of some seed capital from these investors that you had found. So what happened? How'd the company go? What happened then? You were in charge. It was your company.
I wouldn't say it was my company. I never pursue control interests, etc. I always believe if you make the pie big enough, everybody will make money. And so in the first year, we tried to mass produce it, and we couldn't because in that kind of industry, your yield will have to be 99 or 95% plus. Right? We couldn't reach that level. At that time, also Apple lost its market share. They lost the drive. So Seagate would tell me, say, "Wow, Stephen, we don't have to do that. We don't have to put another $5 into the hard disk drive." So at that time, we were waiting for that business to happen, which never happened too long. And we developed other business. And one of my former competitors told me, he said, "Stephen, he said, in DC, there are many people who can write proposals. He said, you're one of the guys who can make things happen. You should do great." When he told me that, I said, "Yeah, sure." So just I did a project for NASA. The other contractors spent $1 million or $2 million, couldn't make it happen. So NASA gave me $25K, and 3 months I got it done. And the next project was the city of Philadelphia. There's a project called Lights of Liberty. It's they hired Steven Spielberg to do the music, etc. And the other contractors spent, I forgot, $2-3 million, couldn't make it happen. And the mayor was so angry, he told the program managers, I don't care where you go to find help. If you have to go to NASA, go. So they went to NASA. NASA said, we cannot help you, but we know a company, this guy who might. So they found me, same thing. I think they paid me $650K, 4.5 months, we got it done.
What did you do?
So at the time, they had, this is an outdoor show, and they give everybody, you rent a 3D stereo headset, and you walk through this outdoor tour. Imagine if it's 90 degrees outside, at the end of the tour guide will ask you to turn, and you turn, there's a screen, and a bunch of red coats, British soldiers shoot at you. Right? So the technical challenge is the sound and the video have to be synced.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge in 90 degrees, weather. So we got that done.
So you started out with some money to be a product-oriented company, but what ended up happening was, at least initially, is you ended up getting government contracts to do services or integration. Is that what happened? You started to grow the business by being a good government contractor?
Well, we never tried to be a typical government contractor.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So after that project, we wrote because I chaired IEEE wireless sensor network standard body. So through that connection, I knew people like Oak Ridge at NIST and many companies well. So I went to DARPA and with NIST and Oak Ridge as my sub. Right? And we were trying to develop a wireless sensor that we can put on anything and collect information. So that was before Cisco went into wireless. So we try to stay focused on technology and product. Eventually we build a business, we call it technology services. Mm-hmm. So imagine if you are a service company that you have a sole source contract vehicle, SBR phase 3, and you have a product that's so different, right? You're the only one. So it helps you justify a sole source contract. And we were not a disadvantaged business. We were not an AA. We were not a small disadvantaged business. But utilizing that contract vehicle and always have unique offering solutions. So we piggyback services.
Mm-hmm. So that's really smart. So to my mind, this is what has always made you interesting to me as an entrepreneurial template, is that you never saw yourself as somebody who was, to be blunt, a rent seeker, just trying to get contracts and do cost plus and just live happily doing that. You used your government contracting or your government ability to scale a business that ultimately was product oriented. And I think that's what I've always thought. Is that right?
Yes. When you get government contracts, life could be easy. You keep getting renewal and you got lazy. And there are many SBR company or service company, they just keep writing proposals. I mean, that's good work, that's competition, that's tough. And we had a discipline at 3TI. And if a program manager came to me and said, Stephen, there's a topic we want to bid. I said, so you have an idea. Now tell me, how do you scale it to $100 million? If the program manager told me, he said, well, I haven't thought about that. I said, then forget it. Right? 150K phase 1, at that time it was 75K.
Yeah.
It's good money, but that's focus. So I think we were one of the few companies have, we got one SBIR phase 1 in '97. Eventually we got multiple SBR phase 2. and we got 10 plus SBR phase 3. Right? So we always focus on how can you get from phase 1, phase 2 to phase 3 instead of just have as many phase 1s you can get.
So everybody, I don't know if everybody knows, we're talking about is the government has a program called Small Business Innovative Research Program where agencies are mandated by law to put a certain amount of their budget aside to invest grants in small businesses to advance technology in government. It's roughly, I think it's $2 billion a year, spread across every agency that uses technology. So it's an underappreciated resource for entrepreneurs, but many of the entrepreneurs that use it don't have the ability or the vision to grow a scalable business, and they get caught in the trap of just writing a proposal, getting some money, finishing the proposal, writing a proposal, getting some money, and they never graduate. It sounds to me like you have. So as the company went along, what happened? You grew a scalable business, and what ultimately did you do with that business?
So we developed, when we started doing Navy, it was some machinery monitoring, it was wireless. And then Navy started, or DOD, or government started paying attention to security. So we had one of the first secure Wi-Fi. And then Intel at the time developed Intel Centrino, the wireless solution you have in your laptop. So they were so excited, the Vice President, Mr. Centrino, came to DC. They had this big government contract summit event with 800 CIO. And they were told, say, great, when you ship that wireless enabled laptop to us, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open the case, take that radio out, and throw it away because it's insecure. So Intel was looking for a solution, and they found me. And so Intel licenses the Centrino source code. We made it, we enhanced the security, we got government certification. Cisco was a reseller. We also had a very good mesh network solution. And this director at Honeywell came to me. We know each other. We knew each other for years at IEEE working group. He said, Stephen, can your mesh network do time synchronization? I mean, we're talking about Wi-Fi synchronized down to milliseconds or less. I said, yeah, we can do that. He said, Stephen, I just want to let you know, everybody told us they could do it, and we tested it. Everyone failed so far. So they test ours, it works, right? So it's a government-funded technology. We work with Intel, Cisco, and Honeywell was a global distributor. And we sold the company in 2006 to a public company. And one of the hidden value of government contractors who have SBIR is once you get to SBIR phase 3, then it's an evergreen, never expire, sole source without size limitation. So if Lockheed Martin buys your company with SBIR phase 3, they can continue that phase 3 contract. Right? No type limiting. They can put service, product, anything to it.
And just to get it translate, what we're talking about is that the way the SBIR program works is you get seed capital, $150,000 to develop a technology. You get phase 2, which is, I guess it depends upon the program, but let's just say arguably, there's $600,000, and that's it. And then if you do that and you have a product that's commercializable, they call it phase 3. And depending upon the agency, they may be able to give you additional money. But the most valuable thing is if you have this product and it's compelling, and the government or government contractor wants to buy it, they don't have to worry about finding a contract vehicle, right? And that's what's gold dust. And it's not, because what I have found, Stephen, tell me what you think, I have found that often the biggest impediment for entrepreneurs who want to sell product or grow product in this community is not the talent necessary to build a great product. It's getting through the federal contracting rules and finding a way to sell into the government. That's the government contractors who have the primes, they often seem like they're in the way. I mean, was that your experience too? And is that really what the SBIR phase 3 really does for a startup? Does it break through that iron triangle of contracting and the various impediments?
Well, when you do business with government, you want to control your own destiny. You want to be the prime. you don't want to be the sub and the mercy of a large system integrator. So with the SBR Phase 3 contract and be able to get, I mean, the biggest SBR Phase 3 contract we got is $87 million, right? So with that, you know, large system integrators were our subcontractors. And I had a customer a Navy customer who told me, he said, Stephen, I love this. You make Lockheed like a small business, right? Because you know, his former boss now, you know, that time worked for Lockheed, so tried to tell him what to do, but Lockheed was my sub, so he just said, Stephen, this is what you have to do. I go work with Lockheed and get them to behave.
I was saying that they can make airplanes and drones, and one day you wake up, you're like the Terminator, your house will be blown up by a mechanized thing. I'll be back, you know, prime this or something. So you sold business, you got to the promised land as a founder. What was that like for you?
You know, after I sold a company, I served as CTO and M&A for a public company for 2 years, right? So that's a great experience to learn. But at the same time,
because the buyer, you went on with the company when they bought the company, you had to go with, you couldn't just walk away, you had to go with so you ended up with, your acquirer said, hey, Stephen, we love you, and here are your golden handcuffs, and come and work for us.
Yeah, so it was a great learning experience, right? But at the same time, I realized that really it didn't fit me. Right? So particularly, you know, my wife told me, he said, Stephen, when you work for yourself, you know, you work very long hours. But every time when I ask you to pick up the kids or be there, I always said, no problem, dear, I'll do that. He said, after you sold your business, he said, she said, when I asked you to do something, you always said, no, honey, I have to be in San Francisco with my boss, or I have to be in New York for this conference. She said, Stephen, that just doesn't work. So.
Interesting. You know, it's funny you say that, because when I was, you know, managing the law firms that I was doing, I tried really hard to manage my personal life, but somehow my time was never my own. And that, you know, you're right, as hard as I work now as an entrepreneur with the various things that I do, I'm able to be at home if I want to be at home. Or it is interesting, isn't it, how, and for me, that was the biggest reason why I stopped practicing law and I started Amplifier, was I couldn't manage my time with my kids.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting. How many people are, I mean, I wonder how many of us become entrepreneurs for family reasons. You know, whether anybody's ever thought about that. So you sold the business. Your wife said, you know what, get back to work so you can be more present in our lives. Okay. So what did you decide to do? Other than be frightened, as we all are, of our spouses, and you know.
Well, I give, you know, we all have the other half, the better half, and I believe that, you know, my wife really drive me to successes. So one of the things my wife said, Stephen, last time it took you 10 years, right? She said, if you're going to do it again, that's too long. Next time I'm going to give you 5 years. Ideally 3.
You know, your wife's no joke. I just have to imagine she's sitting there with, like, you know, rolling pin, pointing at a watch.
Is that what it is?
No, exactly. Well, yeah.
So those are good questions, right?
Yeah,
Actually, you know, I sat down and asked myself, what are the lessons learned? And I look at what I did. You know, I started with the technology. I had to change the technology. I didn't have a team. I had to build a team. Right? I didn't have customer. I have to find new customers. So very simple. I said, well, in order to cut the time, I'm not going to develop technologies. I'm not going to build a new team. I'm not going to find new customers. So you know Power Fingerprinting, right? You know, a new startup I'm involved with. So I talked to the professor at Virginia Tech, Jeff Reed. I have known him many years. I said, Jeff, you know, we work well together. Let's do something. So I said, very simple. You know, find a proven technology with a working prototype. I don't want to just license the technology, bring a professor or a graduate student, And I must be able to call my customers and tell them, and they will say, Stephen, come on, it's not real. If it's real, I'll buy. Right? Very simple. Proven technology, a team, and customers who want it. And boom, that was it.
So that's power fingerprinting, and you started that, but you're involved in other things as well. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about Blue Ventures and what you do with that and how that fits into this entrepreneurial journey you are.
You know, I was doing my own angel investment. When you deal with one or two, that's fine. You do your own you find your own deal, you do your own due diligence, and you get involved in operation. And I reached a limit of my hours. And some of the friends they have been with Blue Venture. It's a 4 years old angel investment group. And so I look at the people, great. Right? They have really, some very senior member, very experienced in angel investment. And what I have learned is, deal flow, that's important. Mm-hmm. So they have some proprietary deals. Second is, the philosophy is you give the angel enough money, right? So we do typically $500,000 to $1 million. And we also do follow-on runs. A lot of angel, they don't do follow-on runs. So if we invest in a company, they need more money, we give them more money. And the next thing is, I think is the most critical thing is we get involved in operation. Imagine 20 seasoned executives, all formal operators with financial, with technology, and we bring the CEO or the management team, we listen to the management team, then we all say, hey, I can help you here, I can help you there. I think that's the differentiator. There are many places you can find money, but you cannot get operational coaching and assistance from 20 people.
What kind of things does Blue Ventures like to invest in? What verticals and areas are interesting? Because you don't do everything.
Well, one lesson I learned is in angel investment, you cannot have a focus. You need to have diversification. So we really, there are certain things we don't do. We don't invest in drug development.
Yeah, you guys don't do it. You don't do healthcare as far as I remember. Have you done a medical device deal yet?
No, well, we have looked at many. Right? And, once something, when something requires FDA approval, wow, that's too much money,
right.
Too long, too much risk. And another thing, I think we don't do is political related, software, etc. And other than that, we are pretty open.
And you guys will do seed rounds and you'll do Series A rounds, which makes you pretty unique for an angel group here in town.
Yes, and we have a reputation. If Blue gives you a term sheet, there are many other angel groups will want to follow, just because they know we'll put in a board member and we'll get involved. And we're going to publish some performance matrix, and it's pretty impressive.
So let's see. So Blue Ventures, so you're an investor. How does it? Because you're still actively starting companies, right? So how do you think? And how would you differentiate how an investor looks at a company vis-a-vis how a founder looks at a company? What are the big differences between how, because I've found that they do look at companies differently.
Yeah, so I'm involved with 4 startups, right? Either as co-founders or as advisor, and then investor. It's very different. I mean, when you are with the company, this is your baby, and I have to say, you tend not to be as open-minded, not to listen to everything. Mm-hmm. Investor are more black and white. One of the lessons I learned is as an investor, you have to find a reason to say no quick, because you have hundreds, if not more, deals in front of you.
That's true.
You just don't have the time. So, I coach many entrepreneurs, and that 30-second,
So important.
3-minute elevator speech is so critical, because if you cannot, you're an investor, if people cannot get your attention in 30 seconds or 60 seconds,
Yeah.
that's it.
One of the things that I find most amusing about the interaction between founders and investors is that, and part of this, frankly, is a cult that's created by the investor community and the service providers enable them. But there's an impression that investors are smart. And the reality is that investors can be smart, but in that moment where you try to get their attention, they're incredibly dumb. I mean, think about how smart you are when you're distracted. Whenever you drive in the Beltway, notice that person in the left lane who's texting at 55. Are they thinking about anything other than texting? No. People don't have the ability to be smart when they're multitasking. They have schooling brains. The mistake I see founders make time and time again is they have that moment, whether it's coming in the investor meeting or it's a networking event or something, and they blow the first minute, just blather. They're dead, because the filtering machine that's that person's investor's brain has already said, yeah, woof, not important. They're distracted, thinking someplace else. So having a cogent and compelling story is very, very important. I agree with that. 30 seconds. I often tell people, you should sit down and explain your business to somebody who knows nothing about your industry, or a child. I actually, for a while, when I was doing this, when I was doing primarily consumer and mobile internet investing with Amplifier, I would actually have my kids listen to the pitches for all the mobile businesses. And their track record, they've done okay so far. CarStar was a home run, Sponto not so much. They loved them both. Anyway, so that brings me to the next thing I wanted to ask you before we throw it for questions, which is, how do you feel about this phenomenon of angel list, online investing, and how does it interact, and how do you think it relates or will relate to the way we've traditionally done angel investing or seed stage investing? Do you think it is disruptive, or how do you see it working together?
Well, I think it is disruptive. I'd love to see it, be mature, because that's a great way to invest in opportunity. The challenges are, the law has not been well defined, and so it's risky at this time. The second thing is, talk about, investment is about return on investment. And, so I went to this angel conference, and one of the lessons learned is the amount of hours you spend in due diligence and the amount of hours you spend with the management team after closing, that contributes to success.
Yeah.
Right? So if you cannot do good due diligence,
Yeah.
or cannot spend time with the management team after you invest the money, then I doubt the ROI will be very good.
That's my concern as well, and I've blogged about this also. I think it's the biggest thing that's going to ultimately hold back crowd equity to unaccredited investors, because what I think you're struggling with, and I know I'm struggling with, is it's great to see a deal online, but I've never invested in a company where I really didn't know the founder. Because at the end of the day, particularly in early stages, we are betting on the jockey, not the horse. And what we're really betting on, fundamentally, is that the entrepreneur will not embarrass us. I mean, winning is important, but you don't want to lose in a hysterically bad way. So the character, but seriously, I mean, think about it in your own life, or you think about, if you've ever raised money, the first thing you have to demonstrate is that you're not going to cause this poor angel investor to go home and say to their significant other or their wealth manager, yeah, I know you told me not to do it, and you were right, it turned out to be fraud. Nobody wants to be in that situation as a professional investor. If somebody fails honestly, you can write it off and move on to the next thing. If somebody defrauds you or turns out to not be of high character, it's terribly awful. So I'm having a hard time sorting out, once you get past the velocity of internet bubble 2.0 that's playing out in the valley right now. Everybody's chasing the next Snapchat or whatever. Once you get past there, with that kind of stuff, you can do online. Oh, Mark Andrees is invested. Okay, that's good enough for me. I just wonder how far angel investing is really going to move away from the blocking and tackling of human behavior and having to connect with at least your initial investors personally. That's the part I just don't. In other words, when people say to me, "Oh, venture capital is dead," or because of online, or angel capital is dead, blah blah blah, I come back to Blue Ventures or Amplifier, or the various angel investors that I know in town. I can't imagine they would ever stop wanting to know the entrepreneurs before they wrote big checks.
Yeah, knowing the people is very important. I suggest to many entrepreneurs that the best time to talk to investors is when you don't need money. Events like this. Right? Yep. So you have a chance to know the people. The best time to make friends is when you're in school. Right? So there's no conflict of interest, nothing on your mind or other people's mind that you're trying to get something out of it. So knowing the people is very important. So one thing is, Blue Venture just recently set up a cybersecurity seed fund, set aside. So we work with CIT, Mark 37, and one thing I like about the program is now the program is 3 months long, and we have a chance to get in there, know the entrepreneurs, management team, every week. Right? So we know them very well. That's very important. The warm and fuzzy feeling, that's very important.
So you have any questions for Stephen? I have a few. Dave, sure.
Usually around a board, it's investment, so it's founders and investors. But maybe give a little guidance on an advisory board, so technical experience, how you have chosen in the past, and maybe how you're participating in the advisory board capacity, and what advice for entrepreneurs as they're assembling that advisory board.
As the entrepreneur or as the advisor?
I think as the entrepreneur first, but also give the advisor perspective.
Okay. I just talked to my co-founders at one startup about the importance of getting an advisory board. Right? So, we all have our limitations, knowledge, experience, and connection. So, having a good advisory board, to me, that's very important. So, but you want to have the diversification. So in one advisory board will have one DoD, one Intel, and then we want to have commercial, industrial, semiconductor, etc. And then you want to have a mixture of technology and business development. I'm big on business development. I'm big on revenue. Revenue. I always try to build a company that will survive on its own. So revenue is important. I will try to find advisory board members who can generate small and quick successes. So, as an advisor, I look for opportunity that I can make a difference. If the entrepreneur I consider, not coachable, then why bother? So if there's a chance that I can make a difference, then usually I try to do more for them, because it's an opportunity to expand my network. So if I'm on advisory boards or 3 or 5 companies, and it's a good networking opportunity with other advisors, and it's good networking opportunity with customers that I didn't know, and it would be great if something that can create value for people I know. I believe in making customers successful. And if you under-promise, over-deliver, and make your customers successful, gosh, that's the reputation you want.
Stephen, I want to ask a question about the formation of power fingerprinting. You said you listed out 3 requirements that you had when you identified the technology. Proven technologies, good technology team, and customers lined up. But you also said something right before that, which was you didn't want a licensing relationship. Can you talk a little bit about that and why that was an important factor?
What I meant is I didn't want to just license the technology without people who developed it.
Okay.
I see. But you would start a business out of the university lab by way of a license if
Yes.
it came along with the people. It's not, because I think it's a really important point to make, because I have had some people in the VC industry spout this nonsensical view that I would never take technology out of the university unless they gave it to me, you know, or transferred it. And first of all, they can't as a matter of law, and secondarily, a perpetual license is the same damn thing. So that's my editorial for the day. Did you have a question?
Yes. How do you consider an entrepreneur coachable? What's your criteria? How do you identify?
Well, simple questions, right? We ask the entrepreneurs, you know. I was an entrepreneur. I consider my patent was the most important things and nothing else is more important, which was wrong, right? So we look for someone who, you know, you should ask some questions. I said, well, this is great. Will you be willing to set up a team and share with the team? Do you see yourself as the only one, or do you see yourself as CTO? Usually most of the entrepreneurs, they are great CTO material. If it's okay if I bring advisory boards, or if it's okay if we bring a CEO to the company. And by looking at the body language, you know, we can tell.
I'll also add some of that, because this is a big area for me as well. So one of the interesting things about entrepreneurs is everybody who's an entrepreneur is somewhat crazy, because you have to be. Something I tell my students all the time, but if you really think about it, you have to be willing to go away from what's comfortable and go away from the status quo and believe that you're going to be able to manipulate the universe to do your bidding. And that's fundamentally, you know, it's crazy in some ways. The biggest challenge is that dysfunctional personalities and functional personalities both engage in entrepreneurial behavior. So for example, anybody know any narcissists? Narcissists are interesting people, right? How are you? What a beautiful day. Narcissist says, you're welcome. You know, think about that. But entrepreneurs can have narcissistic characteristics. If you've ever known somebody who's a sociopath, it's a very unfortunate thing. Sociopaths and entrepreneurs can have a lot of the same characteristics. So one of the interesting things about being an investor is, because remember, our number one goal is not to be embarrassed, is to try to figure out if somebody is sane enough to be a successful entrepreneur, but crazy enough to be an entrepreneur, vis-a-vis just bug nut crazy. And the best way to see if somebody has got a healthy personality is to see whether or not they're self-critical. I mean, I know this from talking with many psychiatrists about the psychology of entrepreneurship and just leaders in general. The ability to be self-critical and listen to what's happening around you and modify your behavior is, frankly, the hallmark of a healthy mind. And so when I look at coachability, I'm not really concerned as much about whether somebody's going to slavishly listen to me. In fact, one of the interesting, bizarre moments I had when I became an investor was, having been on boards for years as a venture capital lawyer, turning up on the board, the first company I invested in, and literally everything I did and everything I said, they wrote frantically down. You know, I was like, oh my God, they're listening to everything I say. That makes no sense. But I was the investor then. So it's not that we expect an entrepreneur to listen to everything we say, but we want an entrepreneur who is self-critical. That's what coachability means to me, because if they're self-critical and they're going to take data around, if I surround them with good people, with a good advisory board, with good, smart people, they'll figure it out. And that's what coachability means to me.
Yeah, I want to share one lesson I learned that changed my career. So, you know, I mentioned I went to DARPA with, you know, imagine this startup only has 3 people, but 2 national labs as myself, right, Oak Ridge and United States. So I went to this deputy director at one of the offices, and I showed what I had. And the guy looked at me, and he was struggling. And then after maybe 30 seconds, it made me feel it was like 10 years. He opened his drawer and showed me 3 things that he had. That was 15, almost 20 years ago. Gosh, those three things, each one of them blow me away. Right? So at that time, my ego was totally destroyed. And so he said, Stephen, he said, you know, I give $5–10 million for companies like Lockheed or MIT. They develop those things for me. He said, do you know what happened after 3 years? I said, what? He said, nothing. They died. They stay in my drawer. And he said, Stephen, he said, you know, you are one of the person came to me. Usually, people came to him know one thing very well. He said, you know, not just one thing. And he said, most important thing is you know how to sell. He said, why don't you be my system integrator? I said, Dick, I said, how do I make my money, you know, if I am just a system integrator? I had a wrong perception that I have to have a technology, I have to have a gadget, then I'll be famous, I'll be rich. But in reality, customers want a solution, right? So they don't care where you get the technology. They want you to integrate it and build solutions. So he sent me to MIT, Carnegie Mellon, etc. And you know, I call MIT. MIT just said, "Wow, we don't need you. Go away." But you know, that really started my career. No longer, you know. So at that moment, I stopped trying to be the smartest guy in the room, because there's so many of them smarter than you, right? But not very few of those people can sell, can integrate and sell. So, you know, I try to follow what DARPA does, and, you know, granted, right, DARPA has a lot of money. And so I look at whatever DARPA is doing, then 10 years from now, there is potential in commercial space. Give me 10 years to figure out what I need to do. And so I can license the technology, form partnership, talk to customer. Wow, give me 10 years to do that, right? So that's good to be in this area.
Questions? Steve? Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Phyllis Cunningham, and this is a part of my due diligence. I know that everything great starts with one tiny idea. I'd like to, you mentioned earlier about how you take an idea and make it scalable. Can you talk to me a little bit about your thought process in that?
Well, we try to look at an idea, you know, from when someone presents an idea to us, we might not look the idea or the target application as intended. You know, so if we talk to enough number of people, I love this lean startup concept. So if you have an idea and the program asks you to talk to 100 potential customers, not telling them what you have, but just say, hey, what's your day looks like? How do you do your job? And try to figure out how this idea can fit in. Right? So, you know, I think that's a great way to find out the scalability, because a lot of time when we develop something as an engineer or as an innovator, you know, really the intended application is not the one would be successful.
So anybody ever have those, you ever get these stocking stuffer things, a little capsule, and you put it in Wonder and poof, it's a dinosaur, or some of these little sponge toys, right? Ultimately, when we're talking about scalability, what we're really talking about is a little germination of an idea that by adding resources, money, human capital, technology, infrastructure, you can create something you can just do again and again and again and again with very little friction. So that's why, for example, we talk about like consulting businesses are not really scalable, because once you sell the time and day, you're done. You know, you can add all the money in the world, but if there's only one person, you can't do any more. The reason why technology businesses are often scalable is once you build something once you create a piece of software, Or once you create a new motor engine or something, you can just stamp it out again and again and again, you know, and that makes it scalable. So when I, as an investor, or as a founder, Steve as a founder, we're talking about scalability. What we're really talking about is the business, by adding external resources, you can create a replicable process with, you know, ultimately a willing market that will pull it in various places. And that is, frankly, where most businesses fail. Because it's hard to create something that is so unique, so special, so wonderful that lots of people will want it, that you can replicate it again and again and again. And that's why most businesses scale out. Not because the founders don't try hard, not because they're not good ideas, but there are a lot of barriers to scaling. Large competitors, for example, small market, not a lot of addressable income. That's why the lean startup methodology is so interesting for all of us, which is that for many years, particularly technical founders, look, I built a new anti-gravity machine. Well, it's great, it's wonderful, and you know, that's a great product. Who wants it? Oh, I don't know. You figure that out. And now what we're saying these days is, well, actually, let's figure out, does anybody want an anti-gravity machine? And more to the point, would somebody like an anti-gravity skateboard? Would somebody like, you know, anti-gravity sofa slide so you can move your furniture? But that's why lean startup methodology is so important. And by the way, one of the interesting things about lean startup is people equate it with lean startup, but if you read Eric Ries and talk with them, or Steve Blank, they actually believe that lean methodology is just as applicable, if not more so, to large organizations. That large organizations waste tens of millions of dollars on R&D every year because they don't bother to ask what the customers want.
Yeah, so the other thing is, how do you set up, how do you get to there? Right? Once you identify something that's huge, that everybody wants, you know, it's go-to-market approach. You know, I don't believe that small companies with few people can scale. So you have to ask, can I work with the system integrator? Can I get onto the mobile platform so they can help me scale? Maybe I'll make less money. I'm not going to sell a product. I'm going to license to them. To me, that's more convincing to have a scalable go-to-market strategy.
Just one quick follow-up question. As that idea is being birthed, how do you protect it? You don't have a patent, you don't, you know, how do you protect your idea?
Well, I will tell you, speaking as somebody who was around intellectual property as a lawyer for a long time and been investing for a long time, here's a newsflash. It's not about your idea, it's about execution. Ideas are fungible, largely. It's very rare that you know, a business idea actually is that unique. I am often struck with how often I will hear the same business pitch to me, particularly in areas like social media and internet. It's unbelievable. Having said that, if you're talking about a piece of technology where intellectual property rights can be relevant, you know, you can discuss your business idea with people, provided that there's confidentiality in place. And also, I would recommend, Kevin, you're an IP lawyer, aren't you? You know, corporate. Doing a provisional patent if there's something patentable. I believe in intellectual property. I think Stephen does as well. I believe very much in the power of patents. I do not think that this current nonsense about patents are bad for innovation is anything other than the desire of big companies to keep people from, you know, competing with them. But putting that aside, the most important intellectual property for any small business is not a patent, it's a trademark. Because ultimately, if your business, whatever your business is successful, you can create a customer relationship and a customer value proposition. And as you do that, and as people talk about you, your trademark becomes a shorthand for your value proposition. The worst thing for any small business is to start with a URL and a trademark that they haven't protected, and then find after a year or two of developing goodwill, somebody comes along and says, guess what, you don't own your name, I do. And you have to change your name. And all the value you've created goes out the window. I don't care, you know, Joe's Pizza, formerly known as Ray's Pizza, nobody remembers, you know, what's Joe's Pizza opened up on this corner. I have New Yorker, you know what I mean? There are like 27 different original Ray's pizzas. I don't know who the original Ray is. Anyway.
I would suggest you consider patent seriously. As an investor, as M&A, that's a box I want to check. As an M&A, that's a box I have to check. So, you know, besides execution, if you build a successful business and and want to have a successful exit, that's something you should have, defendable IP.
Yeah. But I would say, first of all, worrying about a business idea or a business concept and trying to get people to sign NDAs, that nobody will do that, and they won't. They will wonder about your level of sophistication, because the reality is that ideas don't matter. We, as investors, and as somebody who's worked with lots of entrepreneurs, I can tell you that what matters in the early stage is the jockey, not the horse. Ideas are fungible, execution is not. And Steve Jobs, everybody remembers Steve Jobs, not because he invented the MP3, he did not. Did he invent the GPS? He did not. Did he invent Gorilla Glass? He did not. Did he invent, but he integrated all these amazing things into products that, even to this day, after he's been dead for how many years, fanboys still lust after. I mean, now conjecture of what's going to be the iPhone 6. All right, well, I gotta admit the iPhone 5C sucks, but still. So, anyways, one more day. Okay.
I
Last
just have
question.
a comment and chime in, so I apologize. But on the patents, maybe you should explain, Stephen. There are many different types of patents, and quite a few are more difficult than others.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot have a higher level of entry in terms of cost and technicality. So they're use passive patents. Likewise on the trademark side. So if you're a systems integrator or services company, as in our first company, we didn't have any patents. We do now, but we try to control that mark. That's something that's relatively easier to do and less expensive. So there are levels. Maybe you can talk for a moment about those levels of protection one could try and achieve at that early stage, because you might have limited resources, or you don't quite know what your unique value proposition is just yet.
Should I put my lawyer hat on for a moment? So I'll start, speaking as a former corporate IP lawyer. So the most important thing is to say is trademarks. Trademarks are actually very easy to start protecting. The answer is you start protecting trademark by just using it. So if you're thinking about naming your business, the place to begin, frankly, is to go on Google and see if anybody is using your name, using the name you want to use. Second thing is go and see if you can get a URL that relates to Name on Network Solutions or GoDaddy. And if you can, start using the name. The reality of intellectual property law is that if you start to use name in business, there is a presumption in your favor, at least within the geographic area you are, that you are the owner of that name. If you plan on being a national business, however, you should hire a trademark lawyer and should do a trademark filing. Because if you file at the Federal Trademark Office, that gives you a presumption if they grant you the trademark in your favor. It costs a couple $1,000 to do. It's not expensive. And so if you have national aspirations, I'd recommend getting a logo done with 99 Designs or something similar, getting a good URL, and hiring a trademark lawyer, spending $2,000 to $3,000 for trademark. Intellectual property, copyrights again, same thing. You can create a copyright just by finishing a work and just mailing a copy to yourself. You have a copyright. But if you want to have everybody know that it exists, you do a federal filing, and it costs you a couple $1,000. Again, it's worth doing. The real interesting one is patents. And first of all, for a while, it got so ridiculous on the internet that people were able to patent a one-click. If you use one click to buy, that's patentable. It's a famous one-click case. There's a real backlash against what are they called, method patents, business method patents, where it's gotten a little bit too crazy. But hard patents, hard intellectual property, actual utility patent, a physical patent, where you're actually demonstrating that you've created something that's unique and valuable. Those are worth doing. They can be very expensive to do. A really top-notch intellectual property lawyer, i.e. not hiring your aunt or uncle, it could easily cost you 15 or 20 grand by the time it's done. That's the bad news. The good news is that you can get started by doing something called a provisional patent, which is a space saver. It lets you get in queue with the patent office, and that can cost, and should cost, somewhere between 3 and 5 grand, which then folds into the 15 or 20 I described. I think best practices these days, particularly because the law has now changed so that inventorship is in the hands of the first inventor to file. I think best practices, if you have a piece of patentable intellectual property, is to file a provisional patent almost immediately. What do you think?
I agree. You said it all.
Oh, wow. It's not every day you say that to me.
Just as a follow-up question, isn't it the ability to defend that patent also that comes into the equation?
It's funny, but as a practical matter, a patent's only valuable if you can enforce it, right? But in the world that we live in, where patents are becoming much more financial investment, you know, we call patent trolls. And but you know, patent troll is an interesting term. Not everybody who's a patent troll is a bad actor. You know, there's Intellectual Ventures, for example, that was founded by you know, some Microsoft alum and you know, various organizations that will buy IP for the purposes of either enforcement or protection. So intellectual property has value. I will tell you that in my life as an investor, my most spectacular flameout was, well, the entrepreneur was a sociopath, but putting that aside for the moment, seriously, I had this wonderful moment where the entrepreneur shared with me the financial statements that everybody in the board had been looking at for last year were science fiction, but if the entrepreneur had told us the true nature of the company, we would have shut her down. And I thought, why are you telling me this? And it's like, and complete with remorse. Anyway, we got our money back because we were able to sell the IP to Google. So,
It's an asset.
yeah, it's an asset. Now, again, it's an asset within the context of a business. There's no question intellectual property is worth more if it's tied to a deliverable product and it's tied to a team, right? It's a blocking road. But in the world we live in today, a patent can be a valuable asset, either to, you know, give the entrepreneur some consolation money or give the entrepreneur more likely better outcome in an acqui-hire, which is something we haven't talked about. You know, there is, I think, a growing trend, and I think it will continue because of the shrinking talent pool of really smart engineers and developers, where larger companies buy a startup, not really because they care about the customers. In fact, most startups don't have customers. They want the team. And the going rate for a team is $1 million an engineer right now. But if you have intellectual property and technology and a platform they want, you can get a strategic value and get a significantly higher exit value. That's how a company with 5 developers can sell for $50 million, for example. It's not, you know, whereas if there's no technology, you're just buying the developers because it's a $5 million route. So those are the reasons why I like IP. One more. Okay, last one, honest to God.
We've been in a couple companies together. The IP story has 2 sides. When it issues, if it issues, it's an asset. To be on the other side and start a business where you did not do a search on everyone else's existing issued IP is really dangerous, particularly here in the internet world. You can start companies every day and infringe on other people's patents. And the cost is in your defense when someone comes after you with an existing patent. And we've seen it happen, and it can be $50,000 to $100,000 a month in legal fees to defend yourself against someone else's IP. It can kill a small company overnight.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a double-edged sword. But again, I will tell you, I had a situation where a company I did invest in, but a company I knew well, a larger company did a